I just feel like I don't know if there's ever been like a shift in fitness, but it certainly feels like everyone's doing it. And when you have everyone and their mother seemingly doing it, it seems like people think that it should be a certain way, but they overcomplicate things and they make it seem like it's this tall order that no one can physically obtain. But I mean, you say it's a lot easier than what people, lead on to actually think.
Yeah, it's definitely a lot easier. And I think with like what you're doing with your 5 steps is also like very it simplifies it a lot more, which is kind of like it shouldn't be difficult. It shouldn't take drastic willpower day in and day out to achieve. It still is. It's a part of your life. It's not your whole life. There's other
Right.
things in life. So I think just having sort of a guide, things like laid out for you, this is little things that you can start doing that amount to bigger and bigger things, adding one thing into your life, yeah, at a time, you
Right.
know.
Well, I mean, so that's a big thing I think just in fitness in general is because I think that people in general they like to do an all or nothing type approach. So like you have this person that has a pretty sedentary lifestyle, 9 to 5. They might have kids, anything like that, and then all of a sudden, they want to lose weight or they want to do this or they want to do that, or run a triathlon, and now it's all of a sudden now they're eating differently, they're sleeping differently, they're lifting differently, and you take all of these things where it gets to be almost kind of difficult to keep up with that, as opposed to like just maybe just starting with sleep or just starting with something that you can kind of track on a daily basis to see a little bit better, not even necessarily fitness results, but just feel better.
And that's a big thing with like a lot of these that people trying to do a specific athletic endeavor. They're not starting with their health. They're
Right.
starting with like if it's running a marathon or even a 5K, it's starting with a mileage,
Right.
right? They're not thinking like they're still trying to cram training around their sedentary life, which is maybe not the best way of going about it. Maybe they go all day and they've drinking 2 cups of coffee and not any water. You're not setting yourself up for that success after work. And then what you do for lunch, that can play into it, right? Did you eat a salad or was it a burger and fries? And you're not really feeling like, then you're more likely to just drive right home and not worry about any sort of training, or you tend to that's where like the willpower comes in, where it takes a lot of willpower to show up at the park or the treadmill or whatever it
Mm-hmm.
is, and you, you know addressing the health things first is going to make all that a lot easier.
So almost like just if you're going to make a fitness transformation per se, if I'm talking to Joe Schmo and Joe Schmo comes up to me and says, "Hey, what's the first thing that I can do?" I mean, I know at least for me, I'm probably not even really recommending any sort of exercise. First and foremost, just because if you don't have these other things in order and you start to go exercising where now if you weren't sleeping before and now you're exercising, you might be able to sleep a little bit better because of the fatigue, but if you don't have that consistent schedule, it can almost do more harm than good. So like if you were to explain to someone that is this sedentary lifestyle, hey Jeff, I want to run a 5K, or I want to at least I want to quote get in shape like what everyone wants to do. What sort of like what is the first thing that you say?
I would preface this by saying I have had people like ask me about getting into shape. A lot of times when someone says they want to get into shape, they mean I want to be in shape right now. And they're trying to unload, right? They start off, they change their diet, and then they feel like crap. they, might start drinking water and then they're going to burn themselves out in the gym. Anyone who doesn't really have any sort of exercise background, they kind of start off with like, some generic weightlifting workout and then trying to run, which, you can break like very advanced activities and they're trying to get better at everything at the same time. So I think when starting with that, someone who is very sedentary, I would say, don't worry about feeling tired in a workout, right? Don't worry about like exercise. There's never too late to start exercising. But yeah, I would put that kind of on the back burner and address other health things first. I would say just starting to drink more water first and foremost. If you're just drinking more water, you're clearing your body of a lot of toxins, you're hydrating, your muscles are now ready to work. And then I would also say something more important, but it's harder to do, but I'd put it as second because it's drastically harder to do, is sleeping.
Right.
Sleeping more and sleeping better. It's very difficult to prioritize sleep. And no one's ever going to solely focus on sleep for their entire life.
Right.
But prioritizing it where you can, having a sort of routine that you can fall into, I would put those as the top two, just prefacing any sort of health transformation. You have to do those two things first. And I mean, it's very easy to just buy a water bottle and just start off by just drinking 1 a day, and then 2 a day, and then 3 a day. And then you don't really need to drink more than that necessarily, but just like acknowledging how much water you're drinking. And then you can kind of start going by like, feel of, I don't need to drink anymore today, or, whatever, adjust it to whatever you're doing that day. But I'd put those two things. And then I'd even say after those, nutrition is far more important to, nurturing your body, so that exercise is now no longer an effort. It's you show up to the gym or the track or whatever, and you're already ready to, your body's ready to perform.
Mm-hmm. So, I mean, even while on the topic of nutrition, I mean, obviously there's tons of fads out there. You got keto, you got vegan, vegetarian, carnivore. You have all these different diets. And it seems to me that people get really wrapped up in a diet. And if you don't follow this diet, you're not going to see the results that you want to see, whether that be, losing weight, gaining muscle, feeling better, or anything like that. What is sort of, I don't want to say like your philosophy in a sense, because everyone's diet is different. And I think that's kind of what, everyone needs to understand. What is your sort of rule of thumb in terms of if someone comes up to you and says like, hey, I want to be vegan, or I want to be vegetarian, or whatever these diets are, what do you say to that, and where should the priorities lie even within a diet like that?
I would say with you have to look at the past of like, how are they eating before. If someone's trying to be vegan and they're eating burgers and fries every day, fried food, processed food, if that's part of your routine, vegan is so drastic. You're going from one side of the spectrum to the other. And I know a lot of people have like different ideas on the vegan diet, and but when it comes down to it, if you're just starting off on like a health and fitness journey, I would just, a general rule of thumb that I think I don't know that anyone would disagree, is like half of everything you eat in the day should be vegetables. Yeah. And I'm not talking like, ignoring any sort of like macros or ratios or vitamins or whatever it is. Half of everything you should eat should be vegetables. And me personally, I eat probably more of that. Probably closer to like 80% is probably vegetables. But if you especially with drinking water, if you're drinking an appropriate amount of water and you're dialing in this, nutrition, roughly 50%, I think you can see incredible results with like fitness and how you feel. If your goal is weight loss, you're eating like all this fiber and taking care of your hydration, you're not going to be as hungry. It's going to feel effortless. And then that other 50%, you can kind of continue on, what I say, like whatever diet very loosely, but
Yeah.
that's like a good place to start though. Is just try to half of the mass of your food should be vegetables, and maybe like scale once that becomes easy, scale up from there. Maybe start looking into a more specific diet, whether that be like vegetarian or keto or whatever. But if you can't even stick to like half of your regular diet in a day being vegetables, then how are you gonna do cut out your carbs with keto, or like
Right.
it's just it's not feasible if you're finding it hard to stick to that 50% vegetable
Right.
idea.
I mean, it just becomes one of those things where if you have keto and this is the keto checklist, well, by week 2 I mean that checklist becomes very loose, and now instead of being strict keto or strict vegan or whatever this is, now it turns into like those burger and fries, and they come in to substitute rather than just saying, well, you could still have those burgers and fries for now, but make the rest of your meals vegetables, and be a little bit more and be a little bit more body aware, I guess, is where I want to go next, and even touching back on getting more sleep, drinking more water. I think you and I have a very similar philosophy, at least when it comes to body awareness. And I think that body awareness in terms of a fitness standpoint is much more important than the amount that you lift. Even, I mean, and now they fall hand in hand, but even like, to the point of how you feel, or the weight that you seemingly have or need to lose or need to gain. Being under and understanding your body is sort of that first, I don't want to say step, but like that first sort of process where if you don't know what your body's getting, or what your body needs, or even how your body should feel, when you start adding stressors and different diets, different workouts, different outside influence, even with friends, going out for happy hour, if you don't have a body awareness first and foremost, by making these things like sleeping, water, nutrition consistent, it gets very difficult to add anything else in and not know how that affects it.
Yeah, and you're not supporting, like I said before, you're not supporting that, like that, the body, like you're not supporting what you're trying to do in the gym. You're like working against yourself by adding those stressors. You're just kind of like, you're going in there and you're grinding through it, and it becomes unpleasant. And that's really why people don't stick to fitness plans like
Yeah,
exercise.
ouch, it hurts.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and I started lifting weights, and now my shoulder, I had to get shoulder surgery or go to physical therapy or whatever. And it's just that they get so caught up in, when you start working out, you get so caught up in like numbers, whether that's weight or reps or sets or days or whatever it is, and that's not really how muscles work. You're trying to apply this like advanced lifting technique to like a beginner that really should be whatever weight feels good, whatever range of motion I can handle. Yeah, just sticking to it's more about consistency than anything.
So that actually brings up a good point. So I think that there's a misunderstanding when it comes to how your muscles actually operate. We won't get too technical here, but I think the concept of I need to lift, feel sore, and then have this copious amounts of protein in order to be better is just kind of flawed. And I'm not saying, I definitely had my phases of doing that. It's amazing to me how limited, and I don't want to say limited, but how simple it is now for me, at least, to understand, well, my muscles recover this way, so I don't need this amount of stuff in order for my muscles to recover.
Yeah, exactly. A lot of it is you're speaking like the muscles don't know, like you know the weight of the weight that you're picking up because it's on the weight.
Right.
Your muscles don't know that. It's a lot of the times based on feel, and they're feeling whatever the tension is, and that tension can be different based on how hydrated you are, based on your diet at whatever point before, whether it was the day before or the morning of or whatever that is, and based on your mobility of the day, right? If you're getting off a plane, if you're getting off a red eye, you're just flying in from California and you try to back squat, probably not going to be your best. If you're even just sleeping in on a Saturday, going to the gym and doing whatever workout you're doing, and then trying to repeat that same workout later in the week after you just worked a 10-12 hour day, woke up early, did whatever, it's not going to be the same. It's going to take more effort to like get through that workout, and you're not going to have as much that's when you open yourself up to injury, and that unpleasant feeling that comes with exercise, that people tend to shy away from it then.
So what do you like doing then? Like when you get to the gym, how do you test that? Not even the gym, or if you go for a run, or just like your general mood, like is there a test that you kind of go through, or you kind of feel to know what you're going to do that day?
Yeah, like you can kind of sometimes you start warming up and you just feel better after warming up, and that's kind of all you really needed, was just to move around. Maybe you just felt kind of stagnant the whole day, and then after you do whatever it is you do for warm up, you start feeling better. At that point, if you're not getting to the point where you're feeling better, you're probably overtrained or overstressed, or too much is happening in your life. And then you're kind of just taking away at that point. If you start the exercise, whatever exercises you're doing, whether it's a run that you just can't get into, chances are that is your body's just not able to handle whatever load you're putting on it at that point. And grinding through that, there's something to be said for mental toughness, but grinding through any given training day is going to just be taking away from the next day or the next week or whatever it is.
And I mean, and don't get me wrong, I think the terminology "no pain, no gain" has validity, but the people that it has validity for are professional athletes, where their job day in, day out, say a football player, from Tuesday to Friday or Saturday, where the walkthrough is, it is grinding, it's practicing, it's watching film and everything to be prepared for that Sunday. And if they aren't getting in the proper work throughout that week, it shows on Sunday. It's a professional athlete. But the idea of no pain, no gain for someone that is sitting in a computer chair for 40 hours a week, why is that something that people tend to turn to more so for motivation rather than feeling it out?
I think it has to do with, it's like a trickle down effect of, we know this works, right?
Right.
If you want to get bigger muscles, right? What did Arnold Schwarzenegger do? He worked out for 5 hours a day. What they don't talk about is, like with professional triathletes, for example, in my mind, they're putting in, some of the most training volume of any other sport, because they have to be good at three different things. Right. They have to be good at the transitions. They have to be good, all that kind of stuff. They do supplemental weight training, core stuff. So in my mind, when you think of a professional triathlete, someone who's getting paid, all they have to do is their sport. Wake up, go for a bike ride, eat breakfast, get a massage, take a nap, do your afternoon training, swimming, running, whatever it is, maybe weight training. When you look at some 9 to 5 guy trying to also do triathlons and they look at the best in the world and what they're doing, they're going to try to replicate that, but they're waking up early, they're training, putting in the time, showing up at work, sitting at a desk, maybe fitting in a run during lunch or eating lunch or, whatever it is, and then trying to replicate that second workout just like the professional is. But the only thing is they haven't recovered. They've done their job. They've probably accumulated more stress, more tightness because they've been stagnant. And then they're trying to go out and do this second workout. And it's just not, your volume needs to be realistic with how you're recovering, right? Or else you're just running yourself into the ground. And there's all kinds of theories now. They can measure that with like heart rate variability, and it's like very accurate. But most people, like professional athletes, they'll even use heart rate variability. But the run-of-the-mill person has a separate job and this is just a hobby, they're not really using heart rate variability.
Right. Is that something you think that people should try to at least, experiment with, or is that just not that important?
I think it's important. I think it's good to understand. I don't know that you need to do it if you're just feeling how your body is. And when you think of, when you're exercising, you're trying to do this as a hobby, right? I think a lot of like what I said made it sound like you shouldn't put an effort into it. I think there's times you should put effort to it. Just know that you are going to have to recover at some point.
You're going to have to go do your 9 to 5 the next day.
Yeah. And if you're dozing off at your job, or if you're, if you have shin splints or, whatever develops from this lack of recovery, could set you back even more than what you think, and by like recovering, if you're burned out and you're fatigued, that doesn't mean like, oh, well, now I can go to the happy hour and stay up late and watch Netflix, nachos, beer. It's more like doing yoga, or maybe instead of a run, go for a walk, or don't try to push a pace at least during your run, or you still get that movement practice in there.
Right.
Just maybe not as intense, especially if you've had several days in a row of very intense training.
Right. Well, I mean, you look at, even what we said earlier, moving is important. Exercising to the point where you're either overtraining or getting very close to that threshold is not as important as nutrition, right? So I think nutrition, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think you agree that it trumps all. If you have your nutrition on point, to the point where, say, just as an example, you're doing a vegetarian diet, you're incorporating some sort of fasting window or period somewhere in there. How does that then transition even into how you would feel minus the exercise?
Yeah, I think so. That's definitely the first kind of pillar of health, so to say, is like probably maybe after sleep, but nutrition. And I don't even know that you really even need to have it like perfect and dialed in. But yeah, how it would relate to exercise, like if you were to just do that, whatever your goal is, if exercise isn't important to you, it's still important to have that movement. Right. There's so much with like, getting your heart rate up a little bit, just breathing, a little bit heavier, even if it's just from walking versus sitting. It's still important to incorporate that kind of non-exercise movement, just to get, there's like circulates your lymphatic system, blood flow, and just everything. It just kind of flushes everything out and actually contributes to recovery a lot more than people think.
Right. So just like simple, just moving every day is going to allow you to sleep a little bit better.
Exactly. The 10,000 steps is like, it's kind of an arbitrary number, but it's sort of a good goal to, if you can get that, at least close to that in, like you will kind of accumulate that sort of fatigue enough that you can
Right.
go to sleep.
Right.
Sleep well.
Yeah. I guess it's interesting to me because I know at least for me growing up, I played sports, baseball, I swam a little bit too. You obviously swam a little bit. There was always kind of this shtick that, you need to exercise, you need to recover, right? You need your sleep. But now that I've kind of, I don't want to say evolved past that, but I guess athletics isn't my first primary goal. It seems to be that it never really had to be that difficult from the beginning. And I know that we touched on that before, but you're a Division I swimmer, at Penn State, and we have had the conversations before where you feel now with the training that you've put in, or at least the nutrition, the recovery, and just understanding body awareness, if you will. You feel like you can almost jump in the pool tomorrow and pull pretty decent times, and that's with much littler training, or at least a better idea of training.
Yeah, it could definitely be more streamlined. We did a lot of, it was like, we were sticking to the NC2A, the 20 hours a week, but it never really, it was always like more than that, especially when you incorporate into like, when you were at a meet with like on a weekend or something, you were going like above and beyond, the time that is kind of allotted. But it was a lifestyle that it didn't really emphasize recovery.
Right. Yeah.
Recovery was sort of an afterthought, and I think it still is to a point in a lot of sports. You have to get the work in, especially in a conditioning sport like track and swimming and whatever else. It's sad that it goes by the wayside. We'd finish practice, we might get out a couple minutes early, like 5 minutes early, and stretch and foam roll and do stuff to contribute to the recovery. But it was never really especially in college, like you're not always sleeping the best, your nutrition's not always the best. What? But yeah, hard to believe. But as far as the like mobility aspects go, I think every sport could do better in improving mobility and improving the basic. We don't have, a physician can go in and take someone's blood pressure and say you have high blood pressure, there's something else going on here, and sort of piece it together there. And in physical therapy, there's kind of a certain joint range of motions for healthy individuals, but there's not something to say like someone who throws or works overhead should have this range of motion specifically. And there's not, they should be able to pass certain tests and get into certain shapes with their joints. Because if they don't have the mobility to do that, that just opens them up for so much more injury. And a lot of times that can just be addressed in the recovery phase of training, which should be incorporated into, if you know about periodization.
Sure.
That should exist in every part and subpart of the periodization. It should be some sort of recovery into that.
Right.
And emphasis on kind of restoring that mobility that kind of gets lost. And there was an interesting study. It was with swimmers who were in like middle school or something, that they were testing their like scapular strength, and they were actually weaker than most other kids just because their lats were so overactivated and were tight and weren't recovered, that they just had bad posture, and they were so worn down, their shoulders were so burned out that their lats were very strong. It's just their low traps, all the kind of supporting muscles weren't there, the ones that we use for good posture. And
and this is actually even something interesting. So I've kind of had I don't maybe a hot take per se, is that even your 9 to 5 can be looked at as a sport. And I think that that's one of the biggest things with just how people feel, injury, recovery time. Because a lot of 9 to 5ers are either, weekend warriors, or they'd like to go out and throw the baseball with their kid and do that stuff. But just simply foam rolling and stretching before you go to work or after you go to work, treating work as your sport, that's your livelihood. That's what pays you. If you show up to work better one day or worse the next, you might still get paid, but if you have that downward trend of you're not performing well at work, you get fired. It's the same thing in athletics. So why is it that people think that foam rolling and stretching is just if you're about to do, a rigorous exercise?
Yeah, exactly. And then also to go along with, like, when anyone goes into the gym, you should be feeling better when you leave. So during
Yeah.
your leg day, you're doing squats and lunges until you can't even move your legs. Then you go and you struggle to make it up the stairs, right? Those exercises in the gym should supplement your lifestyle, your posture. It should all go back to posture or being able to do some sort of task. So you should feel better going upstairs after the gym than before the gym. If you're exercising to the point where you can't make it up the stairs without pain, or you're limping up the stairs,
Right.
that was too much.
Right.
Obviously. Same thing. It's kind of like with any given sport, you have with the different phases of training. If you're trying to get, like for swimming, we do like weighted pull-ups. We never did weighted pull-ups to the point where it would affect our swimming. We're trying to get better at swimming. Not at pull-ups. The pull-ups were sort of supplementing the swimming. So if we do so many pull-ups, we can't even, reach our arm all the way in front of us, then, you probably your priorities in training are just a little bit off.
Right. And you even take that one step further where you have the New Year's resolutioners. The people that start January 1st for a fitness transformation, which we've kind of already said that if there's really two things to focus on the most, it's get more sleep, drink more water. And that's the most important thing, and sort of add things as we can get there. But if someone were, the biggest thing that I see is that someone wants to make this change, do all these things, and then I think it's January 17th is like National Give Up Your Resolution Day,
Yeah,
or something.
Like 80% of
Yeah,
everyone.
they just stop. And the reason for that, my eyes, is either they're in pain, it's too inconvenient, and one, it's cold turkey. I mean, they are saying January 1st, or say this next upcoming Monday, I'm going all in. So you like you said, you lead yourself up to, potentially getting injured, potentially doing something where if your body's not mobile enough to even perform some of these exercises, you get in your own way. So if I'm going to the gym, and I do think that there is validity to going to the gym, say Monday through Friday, or being physically active. And I don't like continuing to say the gym because that's not the more important thing. The more important thing is that you're moving. But a general, what the fitness realm says is Monday through Friday, then you take off Saturday, Sunday, and you recover. If I have a sedentary lifestyle and I want to start doing something or just get better for my daughter or my son's wedding, what should I do in the gym that first day? Or what should I do that first day to get moving? Or the diet. So walk me through, if you're in a sedentary lifestyle, how you would start that.
Yeah. And then I also don't think it needs to be January 1st.
Right. Yeah.
A lot of a lot of people like to set resolutions and sort of add different things. And I have a very good friend that just like every year he pick, I want to be better at reading this year. January 1st starts reading, sticks to it. He's very disciplined like that. But when you're looking at that, it's there's always a reason, because then you get to January 1st and whatever always have an
Right.
excuse not to do something, and there's always an excuse to do something. But I would say, starting with all the steps that you guys talk about, that we talked about just now, just kind of starting with like hydration, sleep, but also as far as a physical activity standpoint, find something that you're passionate about. If you hate running and you're trying to exercise with running, it's not gonna work.
Right.
There's and I do not believe that that like people were meant to move. I don't believe that there's someone, like every person has something that they can find that they're good at, and that they can kind of progress to get better at. So maybe don't think of it as like, I want to stick to this weight training workout, or like they kind of divorce fitness from like movement. And I think maybe finding, like, for example, if you join like a volleyball team,
Right.
you're like local volleyball
Club,
league,
rec, yeah,
whatever it is. You love volleyball, played it in high school or whatever, and you join that, and they play twice a week, and so you play twice a week. Starting with that, and then you can kind of move into like, wow, it really takes it out of me to play a volleyball game. I can hardly walk the next day. So then you implement kind of a weight training thing, just so that you can kind of tolerate those loads while you're playing volleyball, and then you're not as sore the next day.
Right.
So now you're looking at it like, I love playing volleyball. We play for 2 hours, and I kind of I don't have any fun that last half hour because I'm so tired.
Right.
So now you start incorporating some sort of endurance training, right? Whether it's like swimming or just kind of hiking, just kind of whatever running once a week, whatever it is. And then like before you know it, you have all these activities sort of supporting that. You're supporting that activity that you chose doing. You can do that with anything. Tennis,
Right.
The amount of ankle injuries in tennis is absurd, and it's
Right.
everyone that has these ankle injuries, chances are they're not really taking care of themselves outside of that.
Mm-hmm.
And then it kind of becomes a new reason to go to the gym. You're not going to the gym to squat more.
Right.
You're going to the gym so that you can play volleyball better, or so that you can just feel better the next day or for the next game, or it just becomes a little bit more of a part of your hobby, more so than, so approaching it from that way of like, this is the activity I want to do, and this is the activity that supports what I want to do.
Yeah.
So not necessarily showing up and being on the stair stepper for 30 minutes.
Right.
More.
Or, I mean, if you're walking up
stairs,
stairs, and that's what you
want
like
to do,
doing.
so.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think that I think ultimately what we would like, and you're involved in this too, is we want to get out the connotation that you need to do this in order to get this, and this. Because it's not that simple. It's different for everyone. But the general rule of thumb is some sort of, you need recovery, you need body awareness in terms of a moving standpoint. But something as simple as sleep and hydration gets you to that next step of more so understanding where your body is, what it needs. So someone that's just starting out, really do yourself a favor and just look internally first, right? And just see if you can get a little bit more sleep. Put the phone down at 10 o'clock as
Exactly.
opposed to midnight.
And that one always kind of, like, the sleeping part, it like, there's always an excuse not to go to sleep.
Always.
Right? I understand students, they have to study. Parts of your education are more intense than others, your semester, whatever it is. But if you just if it's just a matter of like scrolling on Facebook or watching Netflix, like nothing in the world is really happening after 9:30, 10 o'clock.
Right.
There's nothing you really need to be for most people,
Right.
you don't really need to stay up that late or
Right.
beyond that. So when you hear about people staying up like past midnight till 2 a.m. and they're like, well, I finished my show, that it's just, that right there, it's just like you can drastically improve that just by kind of being more disciplined, and then you feel better the next day, and all kinds of health benefits just come out of that. And it's not, it makes exercise and moving like almost effortless.
Yeah. Well, I was gonna say that you're already feeling better and you haven't moved anything.
Yeah,
Well,
you haven't even showed up to the gym.
actually, all you've done is just slept, which is seemingly the exact opposite of what you think that you need to do for getting in better shape or doing whatever you need to do.
Yeah, and then if staying up late is like your thing, I know I still on weekends, sometimes you're up pretty late, past midnight, 1 a.m. or whatever. It's kind of to relate it to the dieting. It's more about the consistency.
Right.
If you can just dial it in Monday through Thursday, it's not quite as big of a deal if you just want to stay up late with your friends.
Right.
And I think that's, when we're talking about going to sleep earlier, it's not every single night from now until forever.
Right.
It's just like, let's be a little more conscious about what we're doing, especially if you have all this anxiety, depression, sometimes that can just be cleared up by kind of just figuring out how to sleep a little bit better, which I know there's a whole lot of other stuff to go along with that. Sure. But I know a lot of people just have less tolerance to stress, and they tend to be more anxious when they're not sleeping.
Right. Guilty.
So, yeah.
I'd say, yeah, I'm right there.
Yeah.
Right there.
So it's just kind of being more mindful of like, what are you really doing past 10 o'clock, past 9 o'clock? Like, do you really need to be awake then? And I know it's, if you're always staying up till midnight, it's not easy to just go to bed at 10. Mm-hmm. It takes a process of sort of waking up a little earlier, going to bed a little earlier. But just considering during the week, you don't really need to be up that late. No. It's kind of a choice that you're making, barring any sort of exams or work. I know,
or
some
kids.
people work, kids.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think the most important thing, and we touched on it, I think it encompasses all of those things, is just consistency. And consistency doesn't, like you said, mean every single day. It's just consistent. So if you do have a diet, and we went over this in a couple different articles, and obviously you and I talk about it, roommates talk about it, having or the cheating on your diet or cheating on your sleep per se, it just doesn't work. But if it's a part of kind of the general consistency, if you're gonna have that pizza, like we like pizza Sundays. So if we're gonna have that pizza, we're not making excuses saying that it's okay to eat pizza, but
and argue it's healthy to eat this pizza.
It's not. It
tastes good.
It tastes good, and I want to eat it. But my body knows, and just aware enough that come Monday, come Tuesday, come whenever I go back, pizza's a part of my diet, but also broccoli, sweet potatoes, veggies that like we talked about earlier are all the more important thing. But yeah, I think that just in terms of getting a simplistic approach, you would just limit it to sleep, water, and then just consistency with all that stuff, and kind of worry about moving not as an afterthought, but as a supplement to doing those things.
Yeah, and going along with moving, I think posture, how you're moving,
right,
physically is more important than any sort of exercise that you're getting. So just being aware of like sitting up a little straighter or standing a little straighter, kind of working. And there's if you just, go on Instagram and type in any sort of like, rehab or posture, you can find so much stuff just on like the different positions that every joint in your body should be in pretty consistently. And so you can actually mitigate a lot of any sort of orthopedic pain, and kind of almost start to get in better shape just by having better posture.
Right.
And then when you go to show up, whatever exercise you are doing should kind of be enforcing that, making that posture just like a little bit more easy, instead of sort of like any sort of exercise that would kind of make you kind of just collapse in your chair during work. You don't want to be like this because, you did so much core that you can't even sit up straight.
Right.
It should all kind of go back to having good posture.
Right.
And I think that's like what I was saying before with like the, like those swimmers, very good at swimming, not good at posture. And especially at a time in your life when you're, with kids and stuff, that's kind of like stuff they will adopt, and that will be their lifestyle then.
Right.
It just gets harder to change that.
Right.
Especially when you start working and there's no, I think kids are they're pushed into sports pretty early on, but kind of like after high school, it's like, okay, well now time to, have a real job, or,
right.
There's a lucky few that get to go to college and do a sport, and even a smaller percentage of that go on to be professional at it. And even then, just because you're a professional athlete doesn't mean you're moving correctly.
Right.
So yeah, just making sure you can do a lot for your body just by kind of maintaining good posture throughout the day, and being aware of where your body is. Like, is your head tilting forward because maybe your monitor's too low, or
right.
Whatever it is.
Just simple little adjustments. Yeah. I mean, these are the points that we both really, I mean, you're going on for a higher education specifically, because of these types of things, that doctor of physical therapy to help mitigate. Ideally, you don't want to see any patients.
Ideally, yeah. It's the only business you're trying to get rid of them.
Right. So it's kind of funny, but just simplifying things. I think that both of us, kind of collectively have, and I don't want to say I've done it all, but like the 5, the 6, the 7 days a week in bodybuilding and eating 5-6 times a day, and not getting that much sleep, and then still having a full-time job, and now sort of simplifying things. I don't think it needs to be as difficult as people make it. And if this is any, sort of motivation for anybody else like getting into it, I would hope that, hearing our dumb voices, at least sort of eases some of that tension, and, at least allows people to think of fitness in a different light.
Yeah. As more of a lifestyle than any sort of like on and off endeavor, and something that there's been people that I've heard literally just been, oh well, I started running, I was training for whatever, I started exercising, I started trying to get into shape, and I hurt myself, and chances are they weren't addressing a lot of health things prior. How are you you're trying to back squat and you can't even like hip hinge, or whatever it is, you're trying to do something, and you're not hydrated, or you don't have the focus or mobility that day, or whatever it is, and then you end up hurting yourself. And
yep. Keep it simple.
You just gotta simplify it.
Simplify it. Make it easy. Be fit for the task.
Fit for the task.
All right, Jeffrey. Well, appreciate you sitting down with me. We'll go ahead and end it there. Let's do this again sometime.
Definitely.
Talk about some other things.
Yeah. Thanks for having me on.
Yes, sir. First and foremost. All right. Thanks, Jeff.